So this could take a while, but let's go ahead and get started. So starting next month, we're going to be doing monthly reading updates, not a massive video in which I'm going to talk about literally every book I read this year, because this is going to take some time. Let's talk about the 84 books that I read this year. So I set myself a goal this year. I wanted to read 50 new books over the course of 2025, focusing mostly on romance if I could. I actually officially set my goal at 75 because I also wanted to reread Animorphs. So the thought that I might get through 25 Animorphs books this year, I was thinking that might be good. So I set my official goal at 75. So my personal goal was 50 new books over the course of 2025. We're gonna do this month to month, and I'm just gonna say how I felt about the book in like 1 or 2 sentences, and the star rating will appear next to the book cover. I do actually have some of the books, but I don't have all of them. So that being said, let's just go ahead and get started. So let's start with January. So the first book that I read this year was The Soul of an Octopus, which was actually a recommendation by one of my subscribers, someone who actually comes by the live stream almost every single month. So thank you for your constant support. I love having you around. And yeah, the book was fantastic. I loved that I got to start the year off with a 5-star read. I learned so much about octopuses, and yes, that is the plural. I learned that from this book. I did learn a lot about octopuses, and they are now like one of my favorite animals because of this book. And it was very reminiscent of when I fell in love with like Mitch Albom as an author, where the book kind of changed me. That's a little dramatic, but there were elements of my life that I was like, oh man, there are lessons to be learned here, and I might take some of those lessons with me. Soul of an Octopus by Cy Montgomery. Absolutely fantastic. Highly recommend it if you haven't read that one. Then I read Wicked, The Life and Times of the Wicked Witch of the West. Now, I have loved Wicked, the Broadway show, for a long, long time, but I have not, well, up until this year, I hadn't actually seen it live in person, and there is no pro shot of it. So it's really hard for me to really share my love for it like I can with Into the Woods. That one I actually hadn't seen live up until just like a few years ago either, which I got to see it twice in 1 year. That one at least has a couple of pro shots that I get to obsess over time. So, but I have never read the actual book, and so many people who know my love for Wicked have asked many a time, have you read the book? And that question came up a lot since the first Wicked movie came out. So I decided to finally sit down and read the book, and I thought it was fine. You know, it was fun to read the source material for the Broadway show. I can't say it was one of my favorites though, but it is how I learned that I like listening to audiobooks at 2x speed. This accidentally started a brand new challenge that I did throughout the course of the year, which we will get into as you might start to see the pattern. So then we got to our first Animorphs book of the year. I had already read 1, 2, and 3 last year. So this year I read, or so 2025, I read starting at number 4, which is The Message. I love it. I mean, I just love Animorphs. That one in particular isn't necessarily one of my favorites, but it's great. It introduces Axe. It's fantastic. It's so different than the way that they do it in the TV show. So it's really fun to compare the two. I love comparing adaptation with the source material. It's a lot of fun. Then I was able to read The Little Liar, which is a Mitch Albom book that I haven't read yet. It's one of his historical fictions, or fictions in general, but one of his historical fiction, but it is a historical fiction about World War II and the Holocaust. It was really interesting. It was a very interesting read. I enjoyed it. After I had read The Soul of an Octopus, I kind of went down this like borrowing spree of Cy Montgomery books, and now I have read all of the books she's put out for adults. So then I read The Hummingbird's Gift by Cy Montgomery, and it was a lot shorter than The Soul of an Octopus, but it was really good. It just recounts her time of taking care of baby hummingbirds, and that is extremely difficult. And again, it was just one of these things where she was able to pull life lessons from this time period of her life, which I just really like about her a lot. Then I finally jumped into the romance of it all and read The Summer Girl by Elle Kennedy. I actually thought I owned it, but I don't. I think I was thinking of Girl Abroad, which is right here in my Elle Kennedy section of my bookshelf, because I do have quite a few books by Elle Kennedy, and I really liked that one. It was actually like the second part of a series that she wrote, And so it was a little not confusing because her series are kind of standalone. It's just characters appear and it feels like you should already know these people. So I did eventually read the first book of that series. Then I read A Merry Little Meet Cute. Why did I read a Christmas rom-com in January, towards the end of January? I'll tell you why. Because I was planning on writing a Christmas rom-com last year in 2025. And so I wanted to do a little bit of research on spicy Christmas rom-com because when I watch my Christmas rom-coms in movie form, they are never spicy. So I was looking up specifically spicy holiday Christmas rom-coms, and that one came up. It was also body positive because it has a plus size female character, female lead. And not only that, but she is in the adult entertainment industry. It was cute. Not my favorite, but it was cute. All right, February. The first book in February that I read was Body Check by Elle Kennedy. I jumped back into Elle Kennedy because at the time, Elle Kennedy had become kind of my favorite romance author, disregarding the fact that she's problematic when it comes to sapphic romance. Fully understand she has her problems. And it was actually this month that I learned that she is not my favorite romance author, and I learned who my new favorite romance author was. But I did read Body Check. It was actually her first book that she had ever put out. It started her whole hockey romance thing because she is the queen of hockey romance. As much as other people have obviously done that now, she kind of started the whole trend. It was very weird because she normally writes in first person present tense, and this one was written in past tense. So it was weird to kind of switch back to that because I had gotten so used to present tense, which is hilarious because when I first started reading contemporary romance as it exists today, which is a lot of times first person present tense, I did not like it, and now I'm so used to it. Now I write it that way. So neither one of these books, well, I still don't have a copy of that's coming, I promise. My first two books are both written in past tense, but going forward, they'll all be written in present tense. So it was weird to switch back to, but it was good. I kind of liked that one. Then I read The Good Girl Complex, which is the first book in the Avalon Bay series, which is where the Summer Girl comes from. I have yet to read the second book in that series, so I am gonna do that this year, hopefully. Maybe, we'll see. Anyway, that was the second book that I read in February. Then after that, I read Just for the Summer. When I tell you, this immediately put Abby Jimenez at the top of my favorite authors list. Not just my favorite romance author, but like Cy Montgomery had become my favorite author over Mitch Albom early on in the year. And mind you, we're still in February at this point. I had read 2 of Cy Montgomery's books, the majority of Mitch Albom's books, and I had put Cy above Mitch, and now Abby Jimenez went whoop right at the top of the list. I loved Just for the Summer, and I have it. It's right here. I actually got this in Book of the Month sometime, when was it? April of 2024 is when I got this one from Book of the Month. I had always heard that Abby Jimenez was fantastic. I really had this desire to read her books because she's not from here, but she lives here. She's actually from California, but she moved to Minnesota quite a few years ago, and her books are set in Minnesota. So I love that because I'm from Minnesota. I'm from the Twin Cities. She's in the Twin Cities. Well, I'm not from the Twin Cities. Well, I guess technically, I was born in Coon Rapids, which is part of the Twin Cities, but I grew up in the Brainerd Lakes area, which is like 2.5 hours north, 3 hours north of here, whatever. Anyway, but we both live in the Twin Cities now, so it's really, really fun to read this. Again, this is not the first book in her series, but much like Elle Kennedy and the Avalon Bay series, at least, this is pretty standalone, but there are just characters that pop up that you theoretically should already know. Love this book. That one of my favorite books that I read in 2025. Absolutely love it. I really related to it right away at the beginning because I am a good luck Chuck. Literally, I have had 3 relationships in my life, whether that be like serious or not super serious or whatever. And as they dated me, they found the person they are going to spend the rest of their lives with. Date me and you'll find the one for you, I guess. But yeah, they are both good luck Chucks. That term comes from a movie from a gajillion years ago, but yeah, they are both good luck Chucks, and so they decide to date each other so then they can both find the one that they're going to be with. And it was such a cute concept. The main female character has complex post-traumatic stress disorder. So when I say that I was sobbing at parts of that book, I cannot tell you. I related so heavily. We have different language for what we call being triggered and things like that. Like she calls it, in the book, it's called going small. I say it's going dark. Anyway, it was so triggering, but not in a way that made me feel worse about my life, but helped me feel seen. I am literally starting to cry because I felt so seen by that book. I have never seen PTSD or CPTSD handled with such care and so well. Read it. Moving on, we finally get to our next Animorphs book, Animorphs 5, The Predator. It's fine. For some reason, even when I was a kid, I remember not being as excited about Marco's books as I was about other characters' books. So it's a Marco book. We're gonna just move on. Then I read Phantom of the Opera. Now, I have loved the musical Phantom of the Opera for a very long time. And I have tried reading the Phantom of the Opera, the original book. I have watched the silent film because I studied film history and criticism and theory in college. So of course that's something that I've seen. And the book has always bored me. So because I was now on this kick of listening to audiobooks instead of physically reading, because they're both the same thing, they're both reading, it's not cheating. I'm planning a whole video about that as we speak. So we're gonna get down and dirty into the whole reading versus audiobook reading, that whole thing. Anyway, we're not gonna talk about that in this video. So I finally just sat down and was able to get through Phantom of the Opera. I hated it. It's like my least favorite book I read all year. I hated it. It was so misogynistic. Granted, I know it was written more than 100 years ago. I get it. Like 120 some odd years ago. I get it. Very different time and definitely a product of its time. But I'm sorry, there is a whole scene in there where Raoul yells at Christine for hanging out with Eric, the Phantom, because her virginity belonged to him. First of all, a woman's virginity does not belong to anybody but herself. And second of all, virginity is a social construct. Let's let go of the concept of virginity, please. Thank you. It was there to control women. Anyway, I hated it. I hated it. Hated it. I will stick to the musical, which I have now seen again since then, and that cleansed the palate of reading that damn book to see the musical again. I actually did watch the pro shot again before I went to go actually see the musical. I did watch the pro shot again to cleanse the palate some more, but I will tell you what, the musical has problems, but so much better. Then I went on a whole slew of Animorphs books for a minute because that's what was coming through on my Libby app. So I read Animorphs 6, The Capture, which is one of my favorites in the series. Then I read The Stranger, which is book 7, which is another one of my favorites. Always has been, always will be. Then I read 8, which is The Alien. Again, much like Marco books, I was never like excited about Axe books either, but I actually really enjoyed that one this time around because I don't know, I just did. I enjoyed that one this time around. Then we jump back to Cy Montgomery and I read A Hawk's Way, Encounters with Fierce Beauty, which again was much like The Hummingbird's Gift, pretty short, but fantastic. God, I love Cy Montgomery's writing. Like, I love the way she takes her encounters with animals and turns that into something like you can just take with you in your whole life. And you feel more connected to the animal, but also you feel more connected to your own being. Like, ugh, please read her books. They're fantastic. Then back to Animorphs for Animorphs number 9, The Secret. I liked that one. That was fine. Again, like, you'll notice the ones that are my favorite where I'll be like, oh my God. And the other ones where I'm like, meh. And I was like, I want to jump into dark romance a little bit because I kind of got this inkling that I wanted to start writing dark romance possibly under another name. And in case I ever do, I have that name figured out and I will at some point. Maybe, hopefully, we'll see. I decided I wanted to jump in and start reading some dark romance because I really haven't. I think some of the romance I read when I was a teenager probably was considered dark romance, but I didn't understand that back then. And I do not remember those books very well. So the first one I decided to read was Bound by Honor because I was very intrigued by the concept of forced marriage and very intrigued by the idea of mafia romance. I didn't like it. It made me feel icky. Made me feel real icky. That's actually number 1 in a series, and I was actually kind of curious about the third one based on who the main leads are in that, because it's right up my alley as far as trope is concerned. But that one made me feel so icky, and they set up that third book in this one, and that one made me feel even ickier. So I just didn't continue. It just made me feel icky. If that is your thing, more power to you. I will never take that away from you. Made me feel icky. I didn't like it. We're just gonna move on. I prefer contemporary romance. I did dive further into dark romance, and I tried other tropes within dark romance, and we'll talk more about that as we get to them. The Hating Game. This was one I was very excited for, because again, right up my alley trope-wise. Plus, I was writing a workplace romance that is a rivals to lovers. Like, I was right there writing that, literally released it, not here yet, but I still was writing it. So I was so excited for The Hating Game. And this is where I learned that, and Bound by Honor is where I learned I like dual perspective. I like dual POV in my romance, because I like being in both of their heads, especially when one character is painting the other to be a bad person, or in Bound by Honor's case, a literal monster. I like being in that person's head as well, so that I have this desire, I actually have the desire to cheer them on. The Hating Game is actually one where I preferred the movie, because I watched the movie after I read the book, and I actually preferred the movie because that gave more of the perspective from our male main character. Like, I didn't like The Hating Game. It could have been so much better. Then I read The Last Unicorn, which I have loved The Last Unicorn, the movie, the animated film, for a very long time. Literally over on this other wall here, I have a fan art of The Last Unicorn. Like, I love Last Unicorn, and my mother has been telling me for years to read The Last Unicorn. I have even met the author of The Last Unicorn. I have never read the book until March of this year. And when I tell you, it may be my favorite book of all time, that is not an exaggeration. To the point that I actually bought the sequel. I have not read it yet, but I have bought the sequel. I didn't know there was a sequel. Actually, it's technically 2 novellas pressed into one book that is not really sequels per se, has similar characters that show up. Yeah, so this is where I also realized that in January I read the source material of something that I've loved for a very long time but never read the source material. Did the same thing in February, and now the same thing in March. By accident. Totally by accident. Not planned. The rest of them, however, were. Enter in my next challenge of the year. Not only to reread as much of Animorphs as I could, read 50 new books over the course of the year, but also find a book each month that was a source material of an adaptation that I love. Then I read Twisted Love, which I guess technically still fits under contemporary romance, but does feel pretty dark romance to me, if I'm honest with you. And I really liked it. That was the second time this year that I started to understand when people who talk about romance books are like, that's my book boyfriend. I've had crushes on fictional characters since I was a kid, starting with Jason, the Red Power Ranger, because it is a romance and you do get to learn how this person is in a romantic sense. I have not read the rest of the series yet. Haven't. Then I read Tastes Like Sugar, which I think is how that's pronounced. I have looked it up so many times on how to pronounce that word. It is the second book in If Shakespeare Were an Auntie by Nisha Sharma, which I have read Dr. Dill. I read Dr. Dill a few years ago and loved it. And basically they are modern retellings of Shakespeare plays. And I did have my issues with dating Dr. Dill, but I love dating Dr. Dill. Tastes Like Sugar was based on my favorite Shakespeare play, which is Much Ado About Nothing. And so I was very, very excited, and it did not disappoint. It was so good. I did very much love it. Probably my favorite of the 3. Then I read Beautiful Disaster, which again falls under that same kind of like, it's technically contemporary romance, but still feels a bit darker. But yeah, I didn't like it or the movie because that was another one that I watched the movie after I read the book. I didn't really like it because again, it wasn't dual POV. There is, and I did read it later, another book that's a companion novel where it's totally from his perspective. So I got to read the book twice, just from different POVs. So I at least got the full scope of that story. And I did like it better after I read his version. because again, I like being in both heads. But that doesn't mean that I liked him at all. Like, I did not like, what is his name? I don't even remember. His name was Travis. I did not like Travis when I read Beautiful Disaster, and we'll talk about how I felt when I read his book. I did not like Travis. I do not think that they should have been together in any way, shape, or form. I think she deserves better. Back to Animorphs. I read Animorphs 10, The Android, which is probably one of my favorite Marco books, but only just because I like Eric. Then we jump into the first Megamorphs. So if you don't know, Animorphs, the book series, had what like Doctor Who has Christmas specials. Same kind of thing happened with Animorphs. A bigger book would come out right around the holiday season, obviously. Scholastic's way of making a little bit more money. So the Megamorphs comes randomly throughout the series, as well as the chronicles, like side story kind of things, or history kind of the world. Anyway, Megamorphs 1, The Andalite's Gift. Then I read One Last Stop. I knew that I needed to start reading more sapphic romance because I really haven't read a lot of sapphic romance. But because I was going to and have written now a first draft of a sapphic romance, I wanted to read more sapphic romance to ensure, especially from sapphic authors, to ensure that I was doing it well, that I knew what I was doing, that I wasn't using problematic language, things like that. So yeah, so I wanted to read that, and I actually just finished another sapphic romance, actually. Literally last book of the year was another one. And I got a new book from them, Casey McQuiston. I did get a new book from them, which I'm also very excited to read. So I think their pronouns are they, them. I'm gonna default to they, them. So I did like One Last Stop. It was good. It was very weird, but I did enjoy it. And it got me really in the end because there was a possibility it was not gonna end the way I wanted it to. But I'm not gonna say if it does or not. I just say read it because it's good. It's really, really cute. I really liked it. April. So April, I read books. I started April with The Fine Print. That's another one I haven't read the others in the series, but I did really love The Fine Print. It was very good. That was again one that's technically, I guess, still contemporary romance, billionaire romance specifically, but does feel a bit on the darker side. So it was kind of another like attempt at dark romance. So yeah, I did like The Fine Print. It was good. A lot. I liked it a lot. And I do want to read the rest. I just haven't done that yet. So then I read Animorphs 11, The Forgotten, which I forgot about. Seriously, I remember going, well, at least it lives up to its name because I don't remember what this book is about. Most of the books I was able to like remember bits and pieces of them or like remember the basic storyline of the book. Totally forgot that one. So lived up to its name. Also, it's so weird to jump from something super adult to definitely not. Then we jump in to read another Simon Montgomery book of Time and Turtles, Mending the World, Shell After Shattered Shell. Shell by Shattered Shell. There we go. That's the name of it. And that one ended up breaking my heart so much. Much like The Soul of the Octopus. Oh, The Soul of an Octopus. It was the same length. Matter of fact, they're about the same size. See, they're about the same size. So then I read Marriage and Mosty, which is the third If Shakespeare Were an Auntie by Nisha Sharma book. And that one was a retelling of Twelfth Night, which I felt like was done pretty well. I really did like that one. I finished that one on my trip to and in Colorado. And then I was reading the next one on the way home from Colorado. So it's kind of fun to think back to that because I was in Colorado reading that one. Then I read Sex and the City. Now, this one, technically cheating because I have technically read it before. I started it back in 2008 when I was getting ready for the first movie to come out. Never finished it. Matter of fact, if I can find it, I very likely still have the bookmark in it, which fun fact is Exodia the Forbidden One. Anyway, what chapter did I actually end on? Chapter 13. I thought it was chapter 11, but chapter 13. So I only got about halfway through it before I just stopped reading it and never went back to it for whatever reason. And I got to a point where I was like, maybe I'll just never finish it because like now it's just by principle I should never finish it. But I decided since I was doing this new project, decided to finally finish it in audiobook form. Hence the reason this bookmark is still here. Then I read Say You'll Remember Me, which is the final book in her most recent, in Abby Jimenez's most recent series that she just finished up, I think. Right? Pretty sure. Hold on. Let me fact check. Sorry, no, it's the first book of her current series. It's her newest book, the one that came out in 2025. So I read that and I didn't think I was going to get it for a very long time, actually. I actually put a hold on Libby for that like a long time ago and finally got it in April. So it took a while for me to get. But it's the first book in her current series. Her next one's coming out this year, so I'm very excited to read that one when it comes out. I love Abby Jimenez. And I really liked that book. It actually, I was trying to decide if I liked Say You'll Remember Me better than Just for the Summer, but I don't. I love Just for the Summer. It's my favorite book she's ever written so far, and I can say that because I've read all of them, and we're gonna get to how I feel about her earlier work. May. So May, I started with the source material book, which is Harriet the Spy. What a wonderful surprise. I loved it. It was so cute. It was so much fun. Having been a big fan of the 96 movie starring Michelle Trachtenberg, rest in peace. I used to watch that on repeat over and over and over when I was a kid. It was one of my favorite movies as a kid, and I loved it. So to read Harriet the Spy, it was kind of like when I read The Last Unicorn, where I could picture the characters because everything was just so close. There were some things that were moved around in Harriet the Spy to the movie, like the movie moved things around and they changed a couple of things. And I was so pleasantly surprised with how much I actually really loved Harriet the Spy. Then I read Part of Your World, which is the first book in the series that has Just for the Summer in it. So I was able to kind of get into that series a little bit, really liked it. It was really good. I love Abby Jimenez. Then I read Walking Disaster, which is the companion novel to Beautiful Disaster. And mind you, did I understand Travis a little bit better because of this book? Yes. Did I like him anymore because of this book? No. That man needs therapy. Somebody get that man therapy. I don't care that he's fictional. Get him therapy. Then I read Fourth Wing. That was a chunky book. Not the longest book, turns out, that I read this year, but that's a chunky book. That's another one. I have not read the rest of the series yet. I'll get to it. That's it for May. Because Fourth Wing took me so long to actually get through, I didn't read any more in May. So, and I didn't read any Animorphs books because I thought I had the next one on hold. Number 12, The Reaction. I thought I had it on hold. Turns out I didn't. So that's why no Animorphs books popped up in May. June. So here's the thing with June. I really wish I would have planned out my year a little bit better and would have read nothing but queer books in June, but I just didn't plan out June properly. I did read one queer book in June, which we will get to, but I did plan out 2026 a little bit better. So if I can stick to the schedule, I'll read nothing but queer books in June and possibly some Animorphs books because I might not be done with the series by then. So the first book I read in June was A Fever. I need to look at the name because it's a long name. A Fever in the Heartland, the Ku Klux Klan's plot to take over America and the woman who stopped them. This was a book that came highly recommended by people to really investigate, racism and to be a better, to learn more history in your anti-racism journey. So I do highly recommend it. It was very heavy. It was very dry, but I don't regret reading it. Even in the slightest. I highly recommend it if you've not read it and you want to be a better ally and you want to learn more actual history versus our whitewashed history and male-centric history. Then at some point I realized I didn't have Animorphs on hold, so I got The Reaction. The Reaction's another one of my favorites. I love that one. So you'll notice a lot of my favorites are either Rachel books or are Jake books, which is weird because Tobias is my favorite character. Anyway, moving on. Then I read The House of My Mother. So I have a weird obsession with cults, and I look at the Frankie family while it's all, obviously true crime because, Ruby Frankie is in prison for horrendous things. At the same time, it did feel like she was creating a cult with her children. So I was very curious about Sherry Frankie's book, and it was very eye-opening. I still learned some stuff, even though I've been obsessively following that case for a while because I find it absolutely wild and fascinating. Then I read The Unhoneymooners. This was another one that I was so excited for. So excited for it. But it was fine. I was disappointed. I was really disappointed. I was very much looking forward to The Unhoneymooners. I am very disappointed. I know there's a movie eventually coming out, and I will watch it, and hopefully that one's better. It was fine. Like, it wasn't terrible, but it wasn't great, you know? Then I read The Friend Zone. Okay. Abby Jimenez, Can We Have a Talk? So this was Abby Jimenez's first published book, The Friend Zone. I hated it. I'm not even gonna bother with spoiler alerts because nobody should read this book. I'm still gonna buy it just because I want to. Why? I don't know. Because I just want Abby Jimenez's whole library in my library. Like, it started out fine. It started out fine. Two people doing a friends with benefits thing. I did not love how they handled female reproduction in this book at all. So our main character, I'm just going to give it to you straight. The main character, the female main character, is going to get a hysterectomy because of some stuff going on. Her best friend's like, but I wanted us to have kids together. And she's like, well, not gonna happen. And she has unprotected spicy time because she can't have kids anyway, because she hasn't had her hysterectomy just yet. But she can't have kids anyway because of everything going on, right? They start a friends with benefits thing. They eventually fall in love, obviously. Turns out from that one time that they had spicy time without protection, his magical sperm made a baby inside of her. I'm done. Now I'm going to do a deep dive into Abby Jimenez's books because I've read all of them and I feel like I can talk about this, but like, she has a weird obsession with getting her characters pregnant. Not necessarily in the book, but at least by the epilogue. It was a real letdown. Then I read The Incredible Journey, which was this month's source material. The adaptation I love, Homeward Bound. I pretty much had read it already. Not really, but I had watched the adaptation of The Incredible Journey that Disney did before Homeward Bound. And I really feel like that was a very close adaptation. Like, I'm pretty sure it was just the audiobook. Like, somebody read the book where they just had animals on the screen doing the things. But I hadn't seen it in years because I much preferred Homeward Bound. And I didn't like The Incredible Journey back when I was a kid because the animals didn't talk like they did in Homeward Bound. Then I read Yours Truly, which is another Abby Jimenez book, which is the second book in the like one with Part of Your World and Just for the Summer. So it goes between those two. Yours Truly, which I thought was really cute. That one was really cute. I liked that one. It's not my favorite, but I liked it. Then I read Animorphs 13, which is The Change. I liked it. I'm trying to keep this short. Then I finally read my only queer book in June, which happens to also be the final book I read in June, which is Whiskey and Sid. I learned that I don't like Omegaverse. Not a fan. Didn't love Omegaverse. I think as a woman in society, in an American society that is leaning very right now, very alpha male and red pill men and all that bull. Having a book constantly talk about alphas and omegas and betas, just, it gave me the ick. I really don't like it, but hey, if it's your thing, enjoy. I'm not gonna yuck your yum. Gave me the ick. Don't like it. Don't like all the talk of alphas. Ugh. Ugh. All right, let's talk about July. So the first book in July was the Andalite Chronicles, which, like I said, is kind of like a backstory kind of thing with Animorph. Not like super crucial to read in order necessarily, but it's helpful, and I'm trying to read them in order as best I can. I actually don't remember if this was quite in order because I know I missed a couple where I was like, oh shoot, I should have read that already. Then I read number 14, which is The Unknown, which was another one that I didn't really remember very well. So then I read my next actual true dark romance, which was Neon Gods. That was good. Yeah, that one was good. Then I read the Happy Ever playlist, which is the second book in Abby Jimenez's first series. So it's a follow-up to The Friend Zone. That one was definitely better. That was probably my favorite book out of that series. I don't love it. Her early work just wasn't as good. Her early work just it wasn't as good. It's getting so much better. Had I read her first books first, I don't think I would have continued reading her books at all. The fact that I read what ended up being my favorite book from her first is the only reason I'm reading her. And the only reason I want to read her going forward. So at some point this year, I started watching the TV show You, finally. For some reason, that's something I've been putting off for a very long time. Finally decided to watch it. And then I got curious about the book that it came from, so I read You. It was very weird to live in Joe's head. And he is so unhinged. I've not read the rest of the series. That's another series I do want to eventually read the rest of, but I have watched the whole Netflix show, or the whole show. I don't think it started on Netflix. I think it ended on Netflix. Anyway, not the point. I've watched the whole show. I have not read the whole series, but I've just read You, and it's unhinged, but it was very interesting. Then I jump back to my childhood and I read Matilda, which is this month's source material that I haven't read yet until now. And I was genuinely surprised. I thought it was more like Harriet the Spy, where it had been written like long time ago, like not while I was alive on this planet. No, it was written like 1988 or 1989. Because at one point, like they're sitting in front of the TV eating TV dinners. And I'm sitting there going, wait a minute, I'm confused. Turns out that they just made a movie very quickly after the book was published. Who would have thunk? Anyway, but no, I really liked it. It was good. I was actually pleasantly surprised by a lot of the books that I read this year that were the source material of things that I've loved. It was earlier on in the year that I just didn't really like them. Moving forward, I actually liked a good portion of them, like a good amount of them. Then, for some reason, I decided to jump into Scientology stuff. Don't ask me why. So I read A Billion Years, My Escape from a Life in the Highest Ranks of Scientology. Out of the ones I read, I think that one was probably my favorite. Out of these weird memoirs I got into for some reason for a little while. That's not gonna be the only one. But yeah, I just wanted to learn more about Scientology, I guess. Like, you know, because again, I'm fascinated by cults. Then I read Animorphs 15, The Escape. It was fine. Again, Marco books. I don't get excited about Marco books. I don't know why. Then I read Troublemaker, Surviving Hollywood and Scientology by Leah Remini, which was a book that I've wanted to read for a very long time. That was really interesting to learn more about her and her world view and how she left Scientology and what happened to her in Hollywood because of it. That was kind of interesting. August was another shorter month because I read actually the longest book that I read this year in August. So that just happened to be Animorphs 16, The Warning. That was a joke. No, so I read Animorphs 16, The Warning. Definitely not the longest book I read this year. Fine. And then I read Ruthless, Scientology, My Son David Miscavige, and Me, which was the final book in this weird memoir trip that I went down of reading a bunch of Scientology books. I think I came across a TikTok where somebody was talking about Scientology and the best books to read about it. I think that's probably how that happened, but I actually don't remember. Then I read the longest book that I read this whole year, which is Haunting Adeline. I liked it a lot. I have not read Hunting Adeline yet, which shocks me because that book ended on a cliffhanger, but I will be reading that this year. I really liked that one. If I had to rank all of my dark romances that I read this year, that is top of the list. So just like proper, you know, I'm gonna read a super spicy, super weird, super dark romance, and then Animorphs. I read number 17, The Underground. It felt like a nice palate cleanser. So in August, source material that I've never read was The Never-Ending Story, which I will say, the Swamp of Sorrows scene was far more upsetting, traumatizing in the book. Artax! What surprised me most about The Never-Ending Story, the book, was the movie is only half of the book. Like, the movie only covers the first half of the book. There is a whole second half. So if you have, and from what I understand, the second Never-Ending Story movie kind of follows it. I've never watched it. Kind of follows the second half of the book, but not really. So if you've only ever seen the movie, you're missing half of the story. Read it. I liked it. It wasn't, again, one of my favorites, but it was good. I enjoyed it. Then I read Becoming by Michelle Obama, and fantastic memoir. Like, a lot of times celebrity memoirs feel like they're cash grabs, or, you know, they're given a book deal because they're famous and so they have to squeak out a book. Honestly, Michelle Obama's writing, I want her to write more books. She is a fantastic writer. Like, fantastic writer. I want her to write more books. Anyway, highly recommend it if you've not read it before. September ended up being another kind of slower month compared to some other months where I read like 10 books. I only read 5. So another slow month. I mean, I guess two of them were a bit longer, but certainly not like Hunting Adeline or Fourth Wing level. But I started out by reading Animorphs 18, The Decision. Then I read Legally Blonde. That was the source material book this month. I didn't like it. Definitely like what they did with the movie, way better. And the Broadway show, also pretty good. I go back and forth on how I feel about the Broadway show just because of literally one song. Like literally just one song kind of ruins the whole show for me for some reason. Anyway, it's fine. I actually watched after I read the book, I watched the movie and then I watched the pro shot of the Broadway show. And I actually really liked the Broadway show a lot better this time around than I did last time I saw it, which is weird because I saw an actual live performance of it at a small theater here in the Twin Cities and they were really good. Like it was a really good production, but I digress. So somewhere on my list in September should be The Departure, which I don't remember if I read that before Legally Blonde or after Legally Blonde. Looks like I read it after Legally Blonde because it says Animorphs 19 and then The Discovery, but that's book 20. So actually I read 85 books. That's what I thought. I thought I did my counting correctly. Anyway, then I read The Departure from Animorphs 19, The Departure. That is one of my favorite books in the entire series. I love it. It's a really good like moral dilemma of the series. Then it leads into my favorite like overall longer arcing storyline in Animorphs, which would have been the next one, which is 20, The Discovery. So if you've read Animorphs, you might remember the David trilogy, because if you read Animorphs, you were traumatized by the David trilogy. And let me tell you, I was traumatized by it again, but we'll talk about that when we get to the end of that one. Then I read The Graham Effect, jumping back to Elle Kennedy for the first time in quite a few months. Read The Graham Effect, which is the sequel series to her off-campus series. And I think it also includes Briar U, which I've never read Briar U, but I did read the off-campus series. I actually have the whole thing right here. It was good. I liked The Graham Effect. It had its problems, but it was fine. Like, it was definitely good. Like, I didn't mind it at all. Then I did follow that up right away with the sequel to that book, which is The Dixon Rule, which I think is probably my favorite in that particular series. I really liked that one. Then October, which happens to be the busiest time for me at my job. So this one was also kind of a slower month for me, reading-wise. I started it with 107 Days by Kamala Harris. Was really interesting to read her whole take on the election and stuff like that. And it just broke my heart all over again when we got to the part where she lost the election, and reminding myself that we are in a state of peril because we have a crazy man in the office, so help. Then I had a nice palate cleanser by reading 21, The Threat. Wait, that wasn't a palate cleanser because the trilogy traumatizes me. This is the second book in the David trilogy. Not quite to the traumatizing part yet. This one ended with the traumatizing part starting. Fine. It was October. It was good to be reading horror books. Then I read The Charlie Method. Not a horror. But it was the first, like, kind of why choose that I read. I mean, they were technically sort of in a throuple, but the two dudes never did anything without her. So it was just always just the three of them. Anyway, The Charlie Method. It was good. I liked it. The Graham Effect is like my least favorite in that series. So that's the trilogy right there. The Graham Effect, Dixon Rule, Charlie Method. Definitely like The Graham Effect the least, but I liked it. Then I was like, I need to pick the perfect book this month for the challenge. And I decided, well, I need something spooky. And the only thing I could really think of, since I'm not really a horror movie person, I decided to read Jurassic Park. And let me tell you, that's a lot more visceral in the book and a lot more scientific. So it was a little drier than the movie was, but it was fun to read that, then watch the movie again. I hadn't seen the movie in a long time. So it was really good to have an excuse to watch Jurassic Park again for the first time in many years. Then beautiful Twist of Fate, a horror book that I had on hold, came available right at the end of October. So I finally got to read an actual horror book in October, which again, I have much better planned out this year, but I read Horror Store. This one I'm gonna grab. So if you're unfamiliar with Horror Store, it is based at like an IKEA like retail location, and it looks like an IKEA catalog. I love the concept. And like literally it's just so much fun. And like the chapters, like sections here, they have like actual like listings and stuff, but they get more and more unhinged as you kind of go along the way, like the product design. This was very good. Really fucked up, but really good. November. So November I started with Life's Too Short, which was the last Abby Jimenez book that I had to read for reading all of Abby Jimenez's books. Life's Too Short is the third book in her first series, and I didn't like it. It was fine. Again, I just had my problems with it. Her early writing was not as good as her current writing. The Friend Zone by far is my least favorite book she has ever written, but Life's Too Short, I don't know. I just felt like I had my problems with it. Anyway, but that's it. We're going to move on. Then I read Unseen, How I Lost My Vision But Found My Voice by Molly Burke, which is a blind YouTuber that I follow here on YouTube, social media in general. And remember what I said about when I was talking about Michelle Obama's book, where celebrity memoirs either tend to feel like a cash grab or they're given a book deal so they kind of have to put together a book? That's what this felt like. The book just felt very surface level. Like, does she owe us all of her trauma? No, but she marketed the book specifically as, I'm giving you my life story, my trauma, why I have PTSD, why I had a hard life. And mind you, everybody handles trauma differently. Things are traumatic to people. You know, different things are gonna be traumatic to certain people. What feels traumatic to me might not feel traumatic to another person. Fully get that. As somebody with PTSD, I get it. But literally, it just felt very surface level because it was, I got bullied. Cool, so did I. I have a hard time dealing with influencer life. That's not relatable. And maybe it's because it came out at a time where I don't want to listen to a rich person talk about how hard it is to be rich and famous. You know, I was unimpressed. I was very unimpressed by her book. Plus the way she talks about AI, I have a feeling that AI had a big part in either writing or editing her book, and sometimes that felt a little clear. Plus, you know, her editor, because it was traditionally published, so I got to think she had an actual human editor, but her editor should have reined her in a little bit because the book felt very disjointed. Like, it was all over the place. Like, she would talk about something that happened to her like 2 years ago here, and then jump back 15 years, and then jump forward like 10 years. I mean, it was all over the place. Like, it just did not feel, as somebody with ADHD, I get it. Because that's how my normal conversations work. But when you're writing a memoir or writing a book, you really should stay at least somewhat linear. You know, time is not wibbly wobbly, timey-wimey stuff when you're trying to write a memoir. Okay, that can be linear. It's fine. I was unimpressed. If you liked it, I'm happy for you. I was unimpressed. And this is coming from somebody who really likes to read celebrity memoir. Like, I literally have a whole section of just celebrity memoir. So anyway, Animorphs 22, The Solution. Hello, I'm traumatized. I say literally after I'm like, she didn't talk enough about her trauma. And then I'm like, this book traumatized me as a child and traumatized me as an adult. Literally, it's the end. The last lines of The Solution. It just gives you the ick. Anyway, I love the David trilogy. Moving on. Then I read the Hork-Bajir Chronicles. November source material book was 101 Dalmatians. I just wanted something nice and cute and cozy. And turns out I got something misogynistic. So, Dodie Smith, not a feminist icon. Not a feminist icon. It's fine. Prefer the Disney movie. I should watch the live action again because I haven't watched the live action one in like 20 years. So, anyway. We love Glenn Close in this house. Then I read Animorphs 23, The Pretender. I remember really liking this book when I was a kid, and I liked it again. And I did not remember all of it, and it felt like I was reading it for the first time all over again, which I love. December! Let's talk about it. So December, I read Animorphs 24, The Suspicion. That was the last Animorphs book that I read this year, so we'll see how far I can get early in the year in 2026. But The Suspicion, it was fine. Then I read Fangirl Down. So now that I've read all of Abby Jimenez's books, I want to move on to Tessa Bailey and Emily Henry and things like that because I want to do deep dives on these romance authors. So I want to read all of their books. And you'd think that I would start with Elle Kennedy because I've read a lot of her books so far, but I was able to find Tessa Bailey and Emily Henry on Libby a lot easier than Elle Kennedy. So I read Fangirl Down. I was fine with it. It was okay. It was fine. This month's source material book was A Christmas Carol because obviously I wanted something Christmas related and I had never read it and I liked it. I still prefer the Muppets Christmas Carol, but I liked it. It was fine. I read it. I'm good. Moving on. Then I read Future Boy, Back to the Future and My Journey Through the Space-Time Continuum. So Michael J. Fox came up with a book this year to celebrate the 40th anniversary of Back to the Future, and it felt like a cash grab, but it was fun. It was fun to learn some more behind the scenes stuff that, I mean, I pretty much knew all of it, but it was fun to hear it from his perspective. especially because he was filming Family Ties at the same time as filming Back to the Future. And it was just the first movie, by the way. Then I read Hello Girls, which is kind of a retelling of Thelma and Louise. It was okay. It was cute. I kind of wish they would have made them gay, but it was fine. Then I read Simply More by Cynthia Erivo. She also just came out with a book this year as well, and I liked it. It was cute. It was really fun to listen to her read her own book, because I would listen to her read me like the phone book. Her voice is so soothing. I love the way she speaks, like her tone and just the fluidity of her voice. Like, you can tell she's done musical theater her whole freaking life. Throughout the course of December, I was reading a young adult advent calendar book where I opened a new chapter every single day. You would know that if you had been watching my Vlogmas shorts, and I didn't like it. It was really poorly written. Did not like it, but that was the next one I finished. And just today, just this morning, I finished Chef's Kiss by TJ Alexander, and it was fine. It was good. It was just too much of a slow burn for me. Like, the writing was fantastic, the characterization was really good, but it was just too much of a slow burn for me. I don't mind a slow burn, but I'm sorry, you don't get together until like the last freaking chapter. Ugh. I need something a little sooner than that. So there you have it, all 85 books I read over the course of 2025. Have you read any of these books? What did you think of those books? Let me know in the comments, and I will see you all next week for a new video, and next month for just what I read in January. I'll see you all next time. Bye!